Thom Hartmann here on the news. You need to know this. Speaker of the House John Boehner probably had a few more cocktails and cigarettes than normal last night. It was a rough Tuesday for him. One day after a source at Standard & Poor's credit rating agency warned that passing Boehner's short-term debt limit deal will still lead to a United States credit downgrade, the Congressional Budget Office piled on even more bad news. According to the CBO, the plan that Speaker Boehner touted as cutting $1 trillion from the deficit actually only cuts $850 billion. Not only that, droves of Republicans came out against the bill, forcing leadership to reach out to Fox so-called news talking heads like Sean Hannity and Brit Hume, as well as a number of other conservative journalists, radio show hosts, and pundits to whip up support for the Boehner deal. But it didn't work. And now a vote on Boehner's debt limit plan that was scheduled for today has been delayed as the Speaker goes back to the drawing board. It's becoming increasingly clear that Republicans invented this economic crisis now, just 5 days away, by turning a routine housekeeping matter done 18 times during the Reagan administration, 7 times during the Bush administration, into a hostage-taking event that's now gotten out of their own control. And the hostages are the American working people, and now the success or failure of the Obama presidency. I'm sure the real leaders of their party, Rush Limbaugh and Grover Norquist, are quite happy. Fighting the banksters, lose your job. Down in Florida, 2 state prosecutors, Teresa Edwards and June Clarkston, uncovered rampant foreclosure fraud perpetrated by big banks using robo-signers to kick thousands of families out of their homes illegally. But as the prosecutors were preparing to prosecute the banksters, they were inexplicably fired by Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi. Why? Because as they allege, the prosecutors are going after the banksters too aggressively. Said Edwards, "We were making too much noise." Attorney General Bondi, friend of Rick Scott's, denies firing the prosecutors for going after banksters, instead claiming they were fired for professionalism issues. Yet both of them received strong performance reviews leading up to the termination. Looks like Republican Rick Scott's Attorney General has a pretty tough job down in Florida, not only prosecuting crimes, but sweeping them under the rug as well. In the best of the rest of the news, mega bank Wells Fargo is in the crosshairs of the Department of Justice. The DOJ is moving forward on a lawsuit against Wells Fargo, the nation's largest mortgage lender, alleging that the bank targeted African Americans with predatory home loans. Banksters went into African American neighborhoods and encouraged prospective home buyers to sign on to adjustable rate subprime mortgages that they knew people ultimately couldn't afford. Wells Fargo didn't care if people could afford the home because they were going to collect their fees up front, then sell the mortgage off to Wall Street before it went into foreclosure. More than 10,000 people were reportedly scammed by Wells Fargo. Federal Reserve and the city of Baltimore are also looking into the matter. Let's see if banksters actually do some time for their crimes, or if they just get let off the hook like they were by Republicans in Florida. The Republican cut, cap, and balance gimmick is now officially dead in the Senate after Republicans forced Democrats to garner supermajorities for nearly every single piece of legislation over the last few years. They were hoping their cut, cap, and balance could get through the upper chamber with just a simple majority. But Harry Reid didn't oblige and tabled cut, cap, and balance because there weren't enough Republican votes to overcome a filibuster. You have a taste of your own medicine, it goes down really, really bitter. As Norway comes to grips with the terror of last Friday, Prime Minister Jens Stoltenberg is sending a message about how his nation will react in the aftermath. More democracy, said Stoltenberg. That's right. Instead of transforming Norway into a security state complete with Chertoff X-ray porno scanners, Patriot Act wiretapping, and color code fear alerts, Stoltenberg is promising more democracy, more openness, and more inclusion to combat the threat of terrorism. If only our nation would have followed the same path a decade ago instead of having a president who told us we should go shopping and be afraid. Not only are Republicans waging war on the economy, they're also waging war on the environment. Yes, as the countdown to economic doomsday nears zero, Republicans in the House are busy passing legislation not about the debt limit, but instead about the EPA and regulations on their big oil and coal polluting buddies. Coming down the pike is legislation that cuts the EPA's budget by $1.5 billion, largest cut against the nation's environmental budget in 35 years. Legislation is chock full of giveaways to transnational corporations, like repealing the EPA's power to regulate greenhouse gases, stripping regulations against mountaintop removal mining, and preventing the Fish and Wildlife Service from naming new endangered species. Responding to the Republicans' legislation, Democratic Congressman Henry Waxman said this is the most anti-environmental House of Representatives in history. Truth is, Republicans are doing just what they promised they would do when their campaign contributors, like the billionaire Koch brothers, the oil barons, cut them fat checks during the last election. Help me get elected, the Republicans said, and I'll help you pollute all you want. Crazy alert, a glowing experiment. Just what are scientists up to in South Korea? They're about creating dogs that glow. That's right, scientists yesterday unveiled Tigon, a 2-year-old beagle who glows. The scientists are working on cures to several genetic human illnesses like Alzheimer's and are trying to figure out if they can inject these diseases into dogs to test certain treatments. Lucky for Tigon, scientists first had to see if it was possible, so they tried the gene that causes the dog to glow instead of an actual disease, and sure enough, the dog turned a strange glowing color. Rumor has it they were performing the same sort of glow tests on humans too, but had to cancel the experiment after their subject escaped from the lab, came to the United States, and became the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And that's the way it is today, Wednesday, July 27th, 2011. I'm Thom Hartmann on the news.